I don't know about all of you, but I got pretty busy last week and missed a bunch of really exciting updates for upcoming horror flicks. So for today's video, let's cover some of them, like some updates on Final Destination Bloodlines, Scary Movie 6, and Alien Earth. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm KillJoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Kicking off today's update video, we have some talk about another Robert Eggers project that he is once again writing and directing with Sean. That is, of course, the Icelandic poet that he wrote The Northman with, as well as his upcoming feature, Werewolf, which we talked about a little earlier on last week. But right after that update came out, he was also announced to be writing and directing a new sequel to Labyrinth, the David Bowie movie from the 80s. This update first came from Deadline, where they explained that plot details for Eggers' Labyrinth are under wraps, but we're told the film is a sequel rather than a remake of the Jim Henson's 1986 classic. That film was, of course, about a 16-year-old girl who was given 13 hours to solve a labyrinth and rescue her baby brother, when her wish for him to be taken away is granted by the Goblin King. What's interesting about a sequel to Labyrinth is that this has kind of been in the works for a long time. In fact, directors Fede Alvarez and Scott Derrickson were attached to potentially do some sort of sequel to this for a minute now. It seems like they're finally getting something off the ground now with Robert Eggers, which I have to admit, this is a little out of his typical wheelhouse. It seems like fans of Labyrinth do want more from this series, however, considering that there are video games, books, even comics that have been written in continuation to this one already. So let's do a little sequel to this cult classic. Let's see what it's all about. And hey, it's coming from Robert Eggers, and he has not missed in my opinion quite yet, even though a lot of the comments, wow, surprisingly did not like Nosferatu. I'm pretty shocked by that, to say the least. That mustache must have really turned people off. Not me. Moving into our second update of the day here, we have the Sadness director Rob Jabez helming a new project very similar to it, an adaptation of Crossed, a comic series from Garth Ennis. So much to talk about with this update. So Ennis is also the person who created the comics for The Boys and Preacher. Both comic book series have been turned into pretty successful TV shows. Obviously, The Boys maybe a little more than Preacher, even though I really like both, maybe even equally. But he also has this sort of zombie comic called Crossed, which Rob Jabez took heavy inspiration from to create his film The Sadness. The comic book is set in a pandemic-stricken world in which those infected with the disease, marked by a cross-like rash on their faces, follow their worst impulses, turning them into homicidal maniacs. So as you can see, really the only difference between something like The Sadness and Crossed is the fact that there's not a cross on the infected faces. Now, one of the biggest criticisms of The Sadness was kind of the plot, but more so the fact that it delved into territory that some folks felt was too far, especially based on some of the comments I got on my review video for it. The film dives into some themes of SA, like zombies are literally doing that to other people, because again, this is a film that is all about an infection that makes you just act on your worst impulses. I think it's supposed to be a little bit of a heavy meditation on just people and society in general, which a lot of zombie properties are. This is taking the Romero approach to the extremes. While that may be way too much for some people, I'm sure those elements are still going to be present here in the Crossed adaptation. Kinda hitting on that a bit here, Garth says it's 2025 and the world is catching up with the world of Crossed in all the wrong ways. So what better time to bring out the movie you've all been waiting for? Not to get on my soapbox too much here, but there are a lot of pretty awful people out there who are feeling very empowered right now, so something like this feels very relevant. Again, a big, massive warning that I'm sure that this will feature a little bit of that stuff I was talking about earlier, so it may not be for you, but it is definitely something I'm interested in checking out some point in the future, whether that's too much for me or not. We just got our first look at the Final Destination Bloodlines logo via composer Tim Wynn. Say that name 3 times fast. It's hard for me. Maybe it's not so hard for you, but he revealed that during an Instagram post talking about how he just finished up the soundtrack for this upcoming 6th entry. Talking about this, Tim says, "That's a wrap. Looking forward to this being released in the theaters this May. Grateful to be a part of this amazing team." I'm not going to be as picky about this logo as I am with a lot of the Scream logos. Remember when they did the Scream with the 2 exclamation points and I was like, what the f***'s going on with that Scream 6? This one works for me. I don't love the subtitle Bloodlines. Name one good movie that has the subtitle Bloodlines. I can't. But I do like all the blood. And blood is always a good addition. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about Final Destination Bloodlines, considering the fact that it comes out in May. That's just a couple of months away, ladies and gentlemen. And it's supposedly going to feature a posthumous performance from the late Tony Todd. rest in peace. One of the final performances from a horror legend, ladies and gentlemen. This is not to be missed. Just like Scream 7, however, it seems like Final Destination Bloodlines went through multiple rewrites and a bunch of different reworkings to get this version that we're going to see this May. But unlike a lot of the folks in the Scream community, I have faith in Guy Busick's scripts. I do like a lot of the stuff that he writes, even though I feel like elements to Scream 5 and 6 may be his weakest work. But if you compare it to something like Abigail or Ready or Not, that are definitely his strongest scripts, I'm excited to see what he does with Final Destination. The really cool thing about Final Destination, the way that I like to describe it, is that it has the fun of the Scream films and the intensity of the Saw movies. It is this perfect in-between of everything from the late 90s and the early thousands, just kind of jam-packed all into one franchise. For that reason, I am always going to be excited about a new continuation in this series, whether it's the best or maybe the worst. We'll find out on May 16th, however. Stay tuned for some more coverage on that bad boy. Now getting into a big update on Alien. Oh my god, there is so much to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, because last night, Alien Earth finally had its first teaser, our kind of first look at some footage, maybe, from this upcoming show. The teaser just shows us a xenomorph trapped in a mysterious spaceship hurtling towards Earth. Now, we already kind of knew that this was going to happen based on a plot description that we got for the show a little while back, but it is really cool to see it in the flesh, even if it does look like a video game teaser. Speaking of that plot description for Alien Earth, that bad boy reads, when a mysterious space vessel crash lands on Earth, a young woman and a ragtag group of tactical soldiers make a fateful discovery that puts them face to face with the planet's greatest threat. Alien Earth is set 70 years in the future from now and 30 years before the events of the original Alien. So I definitely feel like this series is going to get into Weyland-Yutani discovering the xenomorph and maybe wanting to harness its power, kind of diving a little more into that thought process that led to the events of Alien. Everyone always says the xenomorph is the bad guy in Alien, but it's really the evil corporation that's making them going and pick this thing up. I'm really excited to see this series potentially dive a little more into that, which obviously some other properties in the Alien franchise have done before. Just like how Alien vs. Predator has already brought aliens to Earth technically, even though this is kind of the first time it's happened in the franchise where it's not a cross with something else. It's at least the first time the aliens have been to Earth without the Predators fighting them. So there's something there. I do like the tagline, "We were safer in space," though. Kind of fits with the original tagline for the first movie, "In space, no one can hear you scream." On Earth, they can hear you scream, but maybe they're not going to do anything about it, which is also terrifying. I'm excited for Alien Earth dropping sometime this summer on FX and Hulu. Ya boy's going to be covering the out of this bad boy. Will we get a full trailer sometime? Maybe during the Super Bowl on February 9th. Look out for it, fellas. But we're not done talking about Alien yet, because Alien Romulus just got a nomination at the Academy Awards, baby, just like a lot of other horror flicks, which, let me tell you, deserved it. Alien Romulus has been nominated for Best Practical Effects, which is pretty in line with a lot of other Alien flicks, surprisingly enough. The first two movies won that award back in their own respective years. Alien 3 and Prometheus also got nominated in the same category, but did not win. Listen, I don't want to trash talk Alien Romulus, because I loved this movie. It was number 10 on my favorite horror movies of last year. I mean, it made the list, baby. This is a banger of a movie. But it's not without issue. I mean, the Ian Holm robot thing, it didn't look great. And apparently Fede Alvarez is fixing that for the home release, although I have not seen the 4K of this movie quite yet. A lot of weird stuff with that one, a little bit of a controversy, but I do like a lot of the things that we saw in Alien Romulus besides that. Will it actually win this award? I don't know. But it does have me excited to see horror actually getting recognized at the Academy, which it rarely does. Finally, we have one last thing about the Alien Romulus sequel, looking ahead towards the future here. Now, a rumor started from Daniel Richtman, who we've been talking about on the page a lot concerning a lot of the Scream rumors that he's been putting out there, but something he's been talking about recently is that he says the studio may want to bring back Sigourney Weaver to play Ellen Ripley one more time and use de-aging technology so that she fits in the timeline where Romulus sits. But director Fede Alvarez, who has talked about working on this new sequel already, called that fun gossip and that it's not true at all. I know you guys get annoyed whenever I say that, hey, this is a third-party source. It may not be true. Take it with a grain of salt. You've heard me say that 1,000 times, but there's a reason for that, because sometimes the directors come out themselves and say, that's not true at all. Now, just real quick, kind of harping on the idea of bringing back Ellen Ripley one more time, I'm not necessarily against it, but I feel like the only way you could do it is just to have an old Ellen Ripley. Could that be the case after the events of Alien 3? I mean, I guess you could bring back the clone from Resurrection, but I don't know how many people are like pining for that. I want to see the OG Ellen Ripley come back if she does does come back. And I would want to like just undo the ending from Alien 3 personally, because it's trash. It's terrible. Alien 3 makes my face redder than a fire hydrant. So like, I don't know, man. If you're gonna bring back Ellen Ripley, you gotta do some retconning, in my opinion, which might be a hot take. To me, the idea of waking up Ellen Ripley through her cryo sleep that she has from the first Alien to Aliens is like sacrilege. You can't do that. When she wakes up in Aliens, she freaks out that it's been like 50 plus years that she went to sleep, and like basically everyone she knows back home is dead. I really hope they continue to focus on these new characters who personally I really liked. Andy is awesome. Kaylee Spaney, one of her best roles without a doubt. What a lot of these requels and modern continuations don't understand is we don't always need to see the old characters again. I mean, yeah, it would be cool to see Ellen Ripley come back. I'm not gonna say no, she's my favorite heroine in all of movies. But sometimes that's just not where the story goes. It's okay to focus on new characters and build them up. Maybe they'll be even stronger than the heroes past. We'll never know unless we go all in on them like we did with the characters from the previous entries. I mean, think about this. Would we really like Ellen Ripley that much if there was only one movie with her? Just that original Alien? I mean, I think she's even more badass in Aliens, and even in Alien 3, a movie that I despise with my whole heart. I think there's some moments where she's pretty awesome. Resurrection, she's totally out of character. We're not even going to talk about that. But point being, there are so many different sides to Ellen Ripley explored in 4 different movies that whether you love it or hate it, this character is very deep, a very interesting person, and an excellent leader to follow. So to me, it's like we got to go all in on some of these characters if they're going to achieve that status. Let's go all in on Kaylee Spaney. Let's see what she does. Same with David Johnson's Andy here. My favorite horror movie of last year, The Substance, has been nominated for so many different things at the Oscars, which is crazy big news. I wanted to do a big video on this last week, I just never got around to it, but let's talk a little bit about some of these nominations. Demi Moore is up for Best Actress, Best Director, Coralie Farja, Best Original Screenplay, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and oh my god, the crown jewel of the Oscars, baby, Best Picture. Let's go. Now listen, The Substance has 5 Oscar nominations. That is crazy. But a Best Picture nomination for horror is like unheard of. It really has only happened a few times, and how many times has it won? Less than you would think. The only horror films that have been nominated for Best Picture are The Exorcist, Jaws, The Silence of the Lambs, The Sixth Sense, Black Swan, and Get Out, with only The Silence of the Lambs winning. That is upsetting, dude. If you've been hanging out in the horror space for a while now, you know that a lot of horror fans like to give the middle finger to the Oscars because they rarely recognize good horror flicks. In 2024, however, Nosferatu and The Substance both got a ton of nominations, which makes me very happy. Good performances are actually getting a little praise this time around. It doesn't necessarily make up for the fact that Hereditary, Us, or Midsommar didn't get a single nomination or any sort of recognition at the Oscars from previous years, but hey, I'll take it. One of our final updates for today is that the Barbarian director Zach Cregger, who also has a new movie coming out in 2026 called Weapons, is going to helm a new take on Resident Evil. Now, this got announced a little while back alongside the idea that they were going to be bringing back Silent Hill, which is a movie that's coming out this year called Return to Silent Hill. Very apropos. Zach here is one of the most unlikely people to be considered a great horror director. If you know his origins, he's one of the silliest guys from The Whitest Kids You Know, a comedy troupe that I've been a fan of pretty much since I saw one of their videos on the bus going to middle school. After his breakout hit in 2022, Barbarian, that still doesn't have a physical freaking release. Everybody wants more from this guy, which is why he's doing this big actor showcase movie called Weapons coming out at the top of 2026. This is going to be his first time really dealing with a big IP like Resident Evil, which of course is a video game that we're basing this off of, but it's also a really big movie franchise, man. I mean, the Paul W.S. Anderson movies made a ton of money, love them or hate them. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about the most recent entry in the franchise, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City from Johannes Roberts, that is taking a very similar approach to this upcoming flick. I like Welcome to Raccoon City, but I don't love it. It takes a lot of the plot elements from the first 2 games and kind of mashes them all into one big story, which I don't think necessarily works. And something I really want to get into with today's update is my feelings on video game-based movies has changed drastically in the past couple of years, especially because of this film. A lot of people want to see very faithful adaptations to these video games that they love. Until Dawn is probably one of the biggest talking points right now in those regards. regards. People are pretty upset with the Until Dawn film because it's kind of tossing the story from the original game and doing something fresh with a similar concept. I personally think this is a good thing because typically when movies get adapted straight, like just exact same story from the video game to the screen, some things just get lost in translation. I think Welcome to Raccoon City might be the very best example of that. Sure, you have familiar characters running around on screen and it's like comfy, it's cozy, it's like nice. We get to see Wesker, we get to see Claire, Chris, Jill, this is awesome. There's a bunch of references to those first two games too, including the Jill sandwich, which if you played that first game, you know what I'm talking about. But in the form of a 90-minute film, I just feel like it fails mostly. That movie tried to do way too much, combining two whole games into one little tiny movie. Like that was way too much story to cover in that small of a time. That's why I feel like when you're adapting a video game to the screen, the best way to do it is just kind of have your own approach on it. I mean, listen, make fun of those Paul W.S. Anderson movies all you want that are a big departure from the video games themselves, but they made a ton of money at the box office. Maybe I got some rose-colored glasses when it comes to those original Resident Evil movies, but I really enjoy them a bunch, and I like that they're kind of an original take on the same idea. The first Resident Evil video game was supposed to be this like campy B-movie, but like in video game form. It had some really scary moments. Those dogs jumping out of the window still haunt my nightmares, but ultimately that story is just better in video game form opposed to being adapted to the screen. Even though the Paul W.S. Anderson films do take elements from the video games and implement them into a new story. That's what I'm really hoping that Zach Cregger is able to do here, even though it sounds like he's taking a similar approach to the Johannes Roberts film, adapting some sort of story from the video game in his own way. Again, I might be in the minority here, but I just feel like when a creative puts his own little 2 cents into something, it is just always better opposed to just taking a story one-to-one from a video game and just adapting it to the screen. I'll be honest though, after only one movie, I have total faith in Zach Cregger. I freaking love Barbarian. So whatever he does, I'm sure it's going to be of quality. And even Welcome to Raccoon City has some really good moments to it. So let's hope this is a banger, just like that new Silent Hill movie that comes out this year. Fingers crossed. One last quick update from Deadline here, ladies and gentlemen. Scary Movie 6 is supposed to drop on June 12th of 2026, just a few months after the release of Scream 7. Although the most recent entry of Scream has had some really weird updates in the last 2 years, Scary Movie 6 has been almost nothing but positives. The Wayans brothers are back to this project after getting kicked off of it for the third entry from the absolutely horrific Weinsteins. They can suck a whole carton of eggs, baby. And Dave Sheridan, who is yet to be confirmed to be a part of the project, admittedly, has said that this film is going to go back to that like ultra over-the-top humor of the original flick. They're not going to water down Scary Movie here in the modern day, even though Hollywood seems to be really afraid of making raunchier comedies today. There hasn't been any casting announcements for Scary Movie 6 quite yet, but I'll tell you what, all of this positive momentum will go right down the drain if Anna Faris and Regina Hall are not in this flick. I'm not interested if they're not in it. Scary Movie 3 and Scary Movie 4 feel very different than the first two because you don't have the Wayans there, but I will say the one thing that keeps me invested in those two flicks specifically is those two characters. Scary Movie 5 is a testament to how all of this can go wrong very quickly with the wrong people in charge. I'm really hoping that Scary Movie 6 is a ton of fun, makes fun a lot of the modern horror movies here, even more than the most recent Scream films have attempted to, and more than anything, I hope it brings back comedies. I miss them, man, the Will Ferrell comedies, the Seth Rogen comedies. We need to bring those back. That's all the updates from this past week, but I'm sure we're gonna have more to talk about at the end of this week. What had you the most excited from today's update video? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.